The first thing I registered was the smell of damp earth and blood, metallic and thick in the back of my throat. My head throbbed, a sickening drumbeat against my skull. I tried to move, but coarse rope bit into my wrists, the fibers scraping raw skin. I was on my knees in mud. Cold seeped through my jeans. Panic, sharp and acidic, flooded my system before my eyes even adjusted to the gloom. Where am I? What happened? The last memory was a blur, headlights swerving, the shriek of tires on gravel, then darkness. "She's awake!" The voice was female, clipped and utterly devoid of sympathy. I forced my eyes open. I was in a clearing, surrounded by towering pines that seemed to press in, swallowing the weak moonlight. Figures stood in a loose circle around me, their features shadowed. 5 of them. 6. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. Cassandra. The name was spoken by a man who stepped forward from the tree line. His voice was a low rumble, like distant thunder before a storm. Cassandra Vale. He knew my name. The sound of it in this terrifying place was more violating than the ropes. I lifted my chin, trying to muster defiance, but my voice came out a ragged whisper. "Who are you? What do you want?" He moved into a shaft of pale moonlight, and my breath hitched. He was formidable. Not just tall, but built with a predatory grace that made the space around him seem smaller. Dark hair, eyes that gleamed with an unnerving, amber-like intensity even in the low light. He wore simple, dark clothes that did nothing to hide the power coiled in his frame. This was not some backwoods kidnapper. This was something else entirely. "You are on contested land," he said, his tone conversational as if discussing the weather. "The territory of the Blackwood Pack. Your scent is all over the northern ridge. Human scent, intruder scent." Pack, territory. My mind scrambled. This was some kind of cult. It had to be. "I was hiking," I managed, the lie tasting like ash. I hadn't been hiking. I'd been running from Bradley, from the suffocating silence of my own life. I'd taken my car and just driven until the city lights faded, then kept walking into the woods. That was my first mistake, wandering into a place I didn't understand. "Hiking," he repeated, a flicker of something dangerous in those amber eyes. He took another step closer, and the air around me changed. It grew heavier, charged with a strange, wild energy that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. A low, subaudible growl seemed to vibrate from the circle of watchers. "With a camera, documenting our borders." A camera, my satchel, they'd gone through my things. The panic spiked. "It's just a camera, I'm a photography student. I wasn't documenting anything." Preston. The woman who'd spoken first moved to his side. She was blonde, severe, her gaze sweeping over me with cold assessment. "The patrol found her near the Silver Creek Den site. She's seen too much. We should just deal with it and be done." Nolan agrees. A broad-shouldered man with a quiet, watchful presence gave a single, grim nod from the shadows. Nolan. Preston, so that was his name. It suited him, old, strong, merciless. He didn't look at the woman, his focus entirely on me, a hunter examining trapped prey. "What do you think, Allison? She smells of fear, and something else. Something faint." He inhaled deeply, and the act was so animalistic, so deliberate that a fresh wave of terror washed through me. "She smells like trouble," Allison snapped. "And human, a liability." Preston crouched down suddenly, bringing himself to my eye level. The proximity was overwhelming. He radiated heat and a scent like pine needles and autumn frost. His gaze held mine, and for a dizzying second, the world narrowed to that amber glow. My heartbeat, which had been racing, did something strange. It stuttered, then settled into a heavy, throbbing rhythm that felt synchronized with his. A ridiculous, terrifying thought. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. "Why were you really out here, Cassandra Vale?" he asked, his voice dropping so only I could hear it. It was a velvet-trapped threat. The truth spilled out, compelled by that gaze. I was running away. His eyes narrowed slightly. From my life. It was pathetic, but it was all I had. From a man. His name is Bradley. He's possessive. I just needed to disappear for a night. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of understanding, or perhaps just recognition of a different kind of predator. A man who thinks you belong to him, Preston murmured, more to himself than to me. His eyes traced the line of my jaw, then dropped to the throbbing pulse in my throat. A possessive light ignited in his own gaze. Interesting. Preston, the moon rises in an hour, Nolan said, his voice a calm baritone. We don't have time for this. The moon. Why did that sound like a deadline? Preston stood up, breaking the intense connection. The night air felt cold without his heat. She's not just a lost hiker, she's a witness, and she's brought the scent of her own problems to our doorstep. He turned to the pack, his voice ringing with absolute authority. She stays under guard in the cells. What? Allison's protest was sharp. You're keeping her a human after what happened with the last one. The last one, the mystery hook snagged in my mind. What happened to the last human? I am Alpha, Preston said, and the words were a final law carved in stone. The air vibrated with the power in that statement. My decision stands. Nolan, take her. The old stone cellar, post 2 guards. Rotate every 4 hours. Nolan moved without hesitation, his large hands surprisingly deft as he untied the ropes from my wrists. He didn't speak, but his grip was firm, pulling me to my feet. My legs, numb from kneeling, buckled. I stumbled and Preston's hand shot out, steadying my elbow. The contact was electric, a jolt that went straight to my core. His touch was searing, and for a heartbeat, his fingers tightened, not in cruelty, but in something that felt like recognition. His amber eyes flared, the pupils expanding. He released me as if burned. Take her, he repeated, his voice now a growl. As Nolan led me away from the clearing, I glanced back. Preston stood silhouetted against the moonlit trees, watching me go, Allison arguing fiercely at his side. His expression was unreadable, but his gaze was a physical weight on my retreating back. The cells were, as described, an old stone cellar built into a hillside. The door was heavy oak reinforced with iron. Nolan pushed it open, revealing a small, dank space that smelled of mildew and old stone. A single, barred window high up let in a sliver of moonlight. A thin pallet lay in one corner. You'll be given water and food, Nolan said, his voice quiet. He didn't shove me in, he guided me. His demeanor was that of a soldier following orders, not a sadist enjoying this. Don't try to escape. The guards outside are not as patient as I am. Why am I here? I asked, desperation finally breaking through. What is this place? What are you? Nolan paused at the door. In the dim light from the hallway torch, his face was all hard planes and solemn duty. You're here because the Alpha wills it. That's all you need to know for now. He started to close the door. Wait, what happens when the moon rises? He stopped. For the first time, I saw a crack in his impassive facade, a shadow of pity or perhaps dread. You should pray you don't find out, Cassandra. The door shut with a solid, final thud. The key turned in the lock, with a sound that echoed in the hollow pit of my stomach. Silence, then the sounds of the forest at night. An owl hooted. The wind sighed through the pines. But underneath it, new sounds emerged. From far away, carried on the wind, came a long, low howl. It was answered by another, closer this time. A primal, beautiful, and utterly terrifying chorus. My skin prickled. The howls didn't sound like any wolves I'd ever heard on nature documentaries. They were deeper, more complex, threaded with an intelligence that made my blood run cold. I sank onto the pallet, wrapping my arms around myself. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep chill and 1,000 screaming questions. Who were these people? What was a Blackwood Pack? What had Allison meant about the last human? And Preston, his face swam in my vision. The Merciless Alpha. The man whose touch had sent a shock through my system that felt less like fear and more like awakening. A forbidden, insane attraction sparked in the darkness of my fear. He was my captor. He was dangerous. And something in my soul, some deep, hidden part I never knew existed, had stirred to life when he looked at me. Little did I know that pull was the most dangerous thing of all. Time lost meaning. The howls grew more frequent, more agitated. Then I heard it. From just outside my cell, a sound that was not human. A wet, crunching pop, like a tree branch snapping, followed by a low, guttural groan of agony or ecstasy. I scrambled to the door, pressing my ear against the cold wood. Outside, one of the guards was breathing in ragged, harsh gasps. Not yet," he grunted to his companion. "The moon's not fully clear." "Fight it, Liam," the other guard urged, his voice strained. "Breathe." Then came the tearing, the sound of fabric ripping, a cry that morphed midway into something between a scream and a snarl. The horrific, visceral symphony of bones cracking and reknitting, of a body being violently remade. I clapped my hands over my mouth to stifle my own scream, sliding down the door to the floor. The sounds of transformation were not just heard. They were felt in my own bones, a sympathetic vibration of pure horror. After what seemed an eternity, the sounds ceased, replaced by heavy, panting breaths. Then, a new sound, the slow, deliberate scrape of claws on the stone step outside my door. A wet, black nose sniffed at the gap under the door. A low, rumbling growl vibrated through the wood and into my spine. The creature on the other side was massive. I could sense its size, its heat, its wild, focused attention. It was smelling me, tracking me. I stopped breathing. The growl deepened. Then, a voice, distorted and thick with beast but unmistakably belonging to the guard named Liam, seeped through the door. It was a single, guttural, possessive word, soaked in lupin hunger. Mine. The door shuddered as a tremendous weight slammed against it. The iron hinges screamed. Dust rained down from the ceiling. I scrambled back on my hands and feet, a scream finally tearing from my throat as I watched the heavy wood splinter around the lock. The last thing I saw before the door exploded inward was a flash of moon-silvered fur and eyes glowing with feral, golden hunger, fixed directly on me. To be continued. The door exploded inward. Splinters of ancient oak and the shriek of tearing iron filled the stone box of a room. Cassandra scrambled backward until her spine cracked against the damp wall, the scream trapped in her throat. Framed in the ruined doorway, haloed by the ghoulish moonlight, was the beast. Liam, but not Liam. A monstrous wolf standing on its hind legs, muscles coiled beneath a pelt of dark fur. Its eyes were no longer human, but twin pools of molten amber, fixed on her. The word it had snarled, mine, still seemed to echo in the ringing silence. This is how I die, she thought, the clarity icy and absolute. Not by Bradley's hands, but by the jaws of a fairy tale. The werewolf took a heavy, shuddering step into the cell. The scent of wild animal, pine, and raw power flooded the space, overwhelming the smells of mildew and her own fear. It sniffed the air, a low, continuous growl rumbling from its chest, a sound that vibrated in Cassandra's bones. It was the sound of possession, of a claim being staked. "Liam," she whispered, a futile plea to the man who was gone. "Please." The beast's head tilted. It advanced another step, claws scraping on stone. Cassandra's hand closed around a loose rock from the crumbling mortar beside her. A pathetic weapon. She raised it, her arm trembling. A new sound cut through the growl, a high, panicked shout from outside. "Liam! No, the Alpha's order," the female guard. Her voice was a distant anchor to a world that still had rules. The werewolf Liam snarled, a flicker of conflict in those feral eyes. He turned his massive head slightly toward the sound, then back to Cassandra. The conflict vanished, swallowed by the moon's call. He lunged. Cassandra threw the rock. It bounced harmlessly off his shoulder. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the impact of teeth and claws. It never came. Instead, a new presence erupted into the cellar. It wasn't a sound first, but a pressure, a wave of dominance so potent it stole the air from the room. The growl that followed was not bestial, but utterly controlled, a vibration of pure authority that commanded every molecule to stillness. Cassandra's eyes flew open. Preston stood in the ruined doorway. He wasn't transformed. He was just a man, silhouetted against the night. But in that moment, he was more terrifying than the beast. His posture was rigid, his eyes blazing with a light that wasn't a reflection of the moon. He looked past her at Liam. "Enough!" The single word was a whip crack. It wasn't shouted, but it carried the weight of a landslide. Liam froze, mid-crouch, a whimper escaping his throat. The animalistic hunger in his eyes warred with a deep, ingrained obedience. The Alpha's will was a chain, and Cassandra watched it snap taut around the transformed guard's mind. Preston took one step into the cell, his gaze never left Liam. "You will stand down, you will leave, you will report to the pen until the moon sets." His voice was lethally calm. "You have broken my law. You have threatened what is under my protection." The possessive emphasis on "my" was unmistakable. It wasn't about the pack's safety. It was about her. With a pained, shuddering exhale, the monstrous form of Liam began to shrink. Fur receded, bones cracked and realigned with sickening pops. Within moments, a naked, shivering Liam knelt on the cold stone, his head bowed, human consciousness and horror flooding back into his expression. "Alpha," he choked out. I lost it. The scent, it was so strong, it—" "Go," Preston said, the word final. Liam stumbled to his feet and fled past his Alpha, not daring to look at Cassandra. The female guard outside gave a soft, relieved gasp, and their footsteps retreated quickly. Silence descended, thicker and more dangerous than before. Preston's attention shifted, and those blazing eyes finally landed on Cassandra. She was still pressed against the wall, the rock clutched in her hand, her whole body shaking with adrenaline and terror. He surveyed the destroyed door, the splinters, the deep gouges in the stone floor from Liam's claws. His jaw tightened. "Are you hurt?" The normalcy of the question was absurd. She shook her head, unable to speak. He moved then, crossing the small space in 2 strides. He didn't touch her, but his proximity was its own assault. He was studying her, his nostrils flaring slightly as if he, too, was catching her scent. That strange, electric awareness she'd felt when he first touched her in the clearing returned, a live wire in the ruins of her panic. "He said mine," she blurted out, her voice ragged. Preston's expression darkened. The moon's madness, it amplifies base instincts. For a young wolf, a new, potent scent can be overwhelming. "Potent scent," she echoed. He ignored the question. His hand came up, and for a heart-stopping moment, she thought he would touch her face. Instead, he plucked the useless rock from her numb fingers and let it clatter to the floor. The sound was loud in the quiet. "This cell is compromised. You can't stay here." A wild, foolish hope sparked. "You're letting me go." A humorless, almost weary smile touched his lips. "No, Cassandra Vale, I am moving you." He turned toward the door. "Come." What choice did she have? She could run into the woods, where more transformed wolves likely roamed, or she could follow the merciless alpha who, for reasons she couldn't fathom, had just saved her life. She pushed off the wall, her legs like water, and followed him out of the broken cellar. The night air was cold and clean, washing away the cell's dankness. The forest was alive with sounds, howls both near and distant, the rustle of creatures moving through the underbrush. Preston walked ahead of her, a dark, confident shape. He didn't look back, but she knew he was aware of her every stumbling step. They moved away from the cellar, deeper into a dense stand of pines, toward a large, low building that looked like a converted lodge. Light glowed from its windows. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice small against the chorus of the wild. "Somewhere you can be watched, properly." The main door of the lodge opened before they reached it. Nolan stood there, his calm, soldier's face grim. He took in Cassandra's disheveled state and the direction they'd come from. "Liam." "Contained," Preston said, striding past him. "Post 2 senior guards on the Moon Pen. He's to have no contact with anyone until I decide his punishment." "Yes, Alpha." Nolan's eyes flicked to Cassandra with a trace of that earlier pity. And her. Preston led her into a large, rustic common room. A fire roared in a stone hearth. Animal skins adorned the walls, and the furniture was heavy, functional wood. It was unmistakably a den. And at the far end, standing with her arms crossed, was Allison. Her expression was a storm of vindication and fury. "See," she spat, the word aimed at Preston but her venom for Cassandra. "I told you, she's a trigger, a danger. Liam is a good soldier, and she reduced him to a feral pup in seconds. Is that not proof enough?" "The proof," Preston said, his voice cutting through the room, "is that she is still alive and Liam is not. He broke my command. The fault is his, not hers." Allison let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "You're blind, or you're choosing to be. What is it about this human?" She stalked closer, her gaze raking over Cassandra like she was examining a stain. "She smells like fear and city soap. She's a liability. The Silver Creek Den is vulnerable enough without a human beacon locked in our heartwood." Cassandra flinched at the mention of the place where she'd been caught, the heart of their territory. Preston turned to face Allison fully, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "My decision stands, Allison. She stays, under guard, in my quarters." The revelation hit the room like a thunderclap. Nolan's eyebrows shot up. Allison's face went pale with rage. "You cannot be serious," Allison hissed. "Your quarters, the heart of the pack's authority, for a prisoner, for a human. She will not be in the cells where any wolf lost to the moon can reach her," Preston stated, as if explaining something simple to a child. "My space is the most secure, and it will remind everyone of whose protection she is under." He finally looked at Cassandra, his gaze inscrutable. "Nolan, take her to the side room. Post yourself outside. No one enters but me." "Preston, think," Allison pleaded, the use of his name a personal appeal. "Remember the last human. Remember what their weakness cost us, what it cost you." A shadow passed over Preston's features, deep and painful. His voice dropped, becoming dangerously quiet. "That is not this. Do not speak of it again." The history in that exchange was a locked door, and Cassandra was on the wrong side of it. Allison stared at him for a long, fraught moment, then turned on her heel and stormed out of the lodge, slamming the door behind her. The silence she left was heavy. Nolan cleared his throat. "This way," he said to Cassandra, his tone carefully neutral. He led her past the common area, down a short hall, to a door adjacent to what she assumed was Preston's private room. The side room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a simple chair, and a wash basin. A far cry from the cellar. A single high window was barred. It was a storage room, Nolan said, almost apologetically. The Alpha's solution: get some rest, you're safe here. Am I? The question was out before she could stop it. Nolan met her eyes. From the moon's children, yes, from the Alpha's judgment. He gave a slight, unreadable shrug. That remains to be seen, but he does not break his word. For now, you are under his protection. Try to sleep. He left, closing the door. She heard the scrape of a chair as he took up his post just outside. Trapped, but in a gilded cage. She sat on the edge of the bed, her mind reeling. Liam's feral claim. Preston's terrifying intervention. Allison's seething hatred, hinting at a past tragedy. And over it all, Preston's inexplicable possessive decree. She stays, in my quarters. The fatigue finally overwhelmed the adrenaline. She curled up on the bed, still in her dirty clothes, listening to the distant howls. She must have drifted into a fitful sleep, because the next thing she knew, the room was gray with pre-dawn light, and the howls had ceased. The door opened. Preston entered. He looked tired but no less formidable. He carried a tray with a bowl of stew, a hunk of bread, and a mug of water. He set it on the chair. "Eat," he said. She sat up, wary. "Why are you doing this, keeping me alive? Bringing me here?" He didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, that intense scrutiny back. "You said you were running from a possessive man. Tell me about him, about Bradley." The shift caught her off guard. Why did he care? He was my boyfriend. It started small, needing to know where I was all the time. Then it was my friends, my work. He said it was love. It felt like a cage. I finally left. He found me. He said I belonged to him. So I ran, and I kept running until I ran right into you. Preston listened, his expression granite. "He claimed you," he said, not a question. "Yes, and you fought his claim. I ran from it, it's not the same thing." "It is," he said, with sudden, fierce conviction. "To deny an unwanted claim is a fight, a primal one." He paced a short path in the small room. "Liam, under the moon, made a claim last night, a base, instinctual one. You fought that too, even if it was just with a rock." Cassandra's breath hitched. "What are you saying?" He stopped pacing and pinned her with his gaze. "I am saying you are a catalyst, Cassandra. Your very presence stirs things. It stirs me." He admitted it so bluntly it stole the air from her lungs. "I felt it the moment I caught your scent in my woods. A pull, a challenge. Allison is right to be wary. You are dangerous, but not in the way she thinks." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "And how is that?" "You make us remember what we are," he said, his voice low. "The beast, the claim, the possession, you bring it to the surface. For a pack living on contested land, that can be a weakness. Or," he trailed off, his eyes roaming her face, "or it can be a forge." A sudden, loud commotion erupted from the common room, shouts, the sound of scuffling. Nolan's voice, raised in alarm. "You can't go in there." The door to her room burst open. Not Preston's, but the door from the hall. A large, unfamiliar werewolf, still in human form but bleeding from a gash on his forehead, stood panting in the doorway. He ignored Cassandra completely, his wild eyes on Preston. "Alpha, it's the Ridge Walkers. They've attacked the Silver Creek Den. They're saying they have a right, that they've found human scent there, proof of our weakness. They're tearing the place apart." Preston's entire body went rigid, the air around him crackling with unleashed fury. He looked from the messenger to Cassandra, the connection crashing down between them with the force of a prophecy fulfilled. The human scent, her scent, at their most vulnerable site. Allison's warning wasn't just paranoia. It was a blueprint for disaster. Preston's eyes, burning with a ferocity that was all Alpha, locked onto hers. "You see," he growled, the sound vibrating with a barely contained shift. "The consequence is here." He turned to the messenger, his voice a command that brooked no delay. "Muster the pack. Now." Then he shot a last, searing look at Cassandra, a look that promised this was far from over. "Nolan, on your life, keep her here." He stormed out, leaving Cassandra alone with the trembling guard and the devastating knowledge. If only she had known that her flight, her very breath, hadn't just drawn the attention of a possessive alpha. It had just started a war. The sound of the lodge door slamming shut behind Allison was still echoing in Cassandra's ears. An attack. Because of me. The words were a cold knife in her gut, twisting deeper than Liam's claws had. Preston's face, a mask of lethal calm, was the last thing she saw before Nolan gently, but firmly, guided her away from the common room's tension and into the guarded side room. The room was a stark contrast to the stone cellar. It was small, windowless, but clean. A narrow bed, a simple wooden chair, a woven rug on the floorboards. A door, presumably connecting to Preston's private space, was set into the far wall, locked from his side. The main door, behind which Nolan now stood guard, was thick oak. It was a gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. The air smelled of pine soap and faintly of Preston, that same storm-wild scent that made her head swim. She sank onto the bed, her body trembling. The adrenaline was leaching away, leaving a hollow, sickening fear. Silver Creek Den. She remembered the clearing, the fallen log where she'd sat to catch her breath, the stream where she'd refilled her water bottle. She'd left her scent there, her human fear sweat, her trail of crushed grass and disturbed earth. And a rival pack, the Ridge Walkers, had used it as an excuse for war. "I'm a trigger," she whispered to the empty room, echoing Allison's venom. "A liability." For a long time, there was only the sound of her own ragged breathing and the distant, muffled chaos from the lodge beyond her door. Raised voices, the thud of heavy boots on floorboards, the low growl of urgent conversation she couldn't decipher. The Blackwood Pack was mobilizing. Because of her. If only I had never left the road. If only I hadn't been so afraid of Bradley that the deep woods seemed safer. But that was a lie, even in her own mind. She'd been drawn into the pines, the camera in her hand seeking the dappled light, the quiet mystery. She'd walked right into a different kind of trap. A sharp, guttural shout from the common room made her jump. It was Preston's voice, not in anger, but in command, a sound that carried the weight of the forest itself. It was followed by a sudden silence, then the swift, coordinated movement of many people leaving. The lodge settled into an eerie, waiting quiet. The door to her room opened. Nolan stood there, his expression unreadable. "Alpha's orders, you're to stay here. Do not attempt to leave. The situation outside is volatile." "Where is he?" Cassandra asked, her voice small. "Gone to Silver Creek with the war party," Nolan said, his eyes flickering with something that might have been pity. "Allison leads the defense of the lodge perimeter." Allison, the woman who wanted her dead, was now in charge. The news was a fresh wave of ice water in Cassandra's veins. Nolan seemed to read her terror. "The Alpha's command stands. You are under his protection. No one will breach this room." He said it like he was trying to convince himself. "I am your guard. My life for yours," by his word. He stepped back and closed the door. She heard the heavy thunk of a bar being lowered across it on the outside. Solitude. It was worse than the cellar. In the cellar, the terror had been simple, animal. Here, it was a complex, gnawing thing. Every creak of the old lodge, every distant snap of a twig outside, was a potential Ridge Walker or a furious Allison coming to finish what Liam started. Hours bled together. The single oil lamp Nolan had left guttered, casting long, dancing shadows. Cassandra didn't sleep. She sat on the bed, knees drawn to her chest, listening. The memory of Liam's transformed face, the bestial mine, warred with the memory of Preston's hands on her. One moment shoving her behind him like a possession, the next sparking a traitorous heat in her core. He feels it too, that pull. He'd admitted it. But what did it mean? Was it just some predatory fascination? Or was it the same toxic ownership Bradley had shown, just wrapped in a more primal, terrifying package? She had fled one cage only to land in another, this one lined with fur and fangs. A new sound pierced the silence. Not from outside, but from the door connecting to Preston's quarters. A key turned in the lock. Cassandra scrambled off the bed, pressing her back against the far wall. The door swung inward. It wasn't Preston. Allison stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the dim light from the Alpha's room behind her. She held no weapon, but she didn't need one. Her presence was a threat. Her eyes, gleaming in the low light, swept over Cassandra with pure, undiluted contempt. Comfortable, Allison's voice was a low sneer. "What do you want?" Cassandra managed, her throat tight. "To look at you," Allison said, stepping fully into the room and closing the connecting door behind her. She moved with a lethal grace. To see the human who's worth starting a war over. To understand what pull he's so fascinated by. She circled Cassandra like a shark. "You smell like fear, and cheap soap. And him, he's marked you with his scent, you know, a warning to the pack, a claim." "I didn't ask for any of this," Cassandra said, forcing strength into her voice. "You never do," Allison shot back, stopping in front of her. "You humans stumble into our world with your problems and your stink, and we pay the price." The last one did the same. Cassandra remembered the heated exchange. "Remember the last human? What happened to the last human?" Allison's smile was bitter and sharp. "He was a trapper, caught poaching on our land. Preston saw something in him, too, a challenge, a spark. He kept him alive, argued for mercy, tried to integrate him." She spat the word. "The man was terrified, of course. He bided his time. And one night, when the Ridge Walkers were testing our borders, he stole a silver-bladed knife from our armory and slit the throats of 2 of our sentries in their sleep before he ran. He made it to the Ridge Walkers, told them everything about our defenses, our numbers, our weak points." The story landed like a physical blow. Cassandra's breath hitched. "We lost 5 pack members in the war that followed," Allison continued, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. 5! My brother was one of them. Preston's leniency, his fascination, got them killed. And now you're here, with your possessive human mate chasing you, leaving your scent all over our most vulnerable den, and the Ridge Walkers are at our gates again. History doesn't just repeat itself, little human. It rhymes, and it's screaming your name. Cassandra felt dizzy. The pieces slammed together. Preston's conflict, Allison's hatred, the pack's suspicion. It wasn't just prejudice. It was trauma. And she was its living, breathing echo. "I am not him," Cassandra said, but it sounded weak, even to her. "Aren't you?" Allison leaned in, her scent a mix of frost and iron. "You're already causing division. You've already triggered an attack. Liam lost control because of you. Preston is defying his entire pack for you. The pattern is written. The only question is how many of us you get killed before you meet your end." The main door rattled as Nolan lifted the bar outside. "Allison, you are not authorized to be in there. The Alpha's orders are currently getting our people killed at Silver Creek." Allison snarled over her shoulder, not breaking eye contact with Cassandra. "I am securing our base from the liability within it." What happened next changed everything. A tremendous, shattering crash echoed from the front of the lodge. It was the sound of splintering wood and breaking glass, followed by a roar that was neither human nor fully wolf, a sound of rage and invasion. Then another roar answered it, and another. The Ridge Walkers weren't just at Silver Creek. They were here. Allison's head snapped toward the main door, her eyes widening for a fraction of a second before hardening into battle-ready resolve. The hatred for Cassandra was instantly subsumed by a more immediate threat. "They've flanked us," she hissed. Nolan threw the main door open, his face ashen. "Breach the eastern wall. They're inside the lodge." Keeman erupted. Snarls, screams, the horrific wet sounds of conflict filled the hallways. The air thickened with the scent of blood, wild musk, and fury. Allison turned back to Cassandra, a brutal calculation in her eyes. The promise of death was still there, but it was sidelined. "You stay in this room, you hide. If you run, you will die. If they find you, you will wish you had died." It was not protection, it was a tactical order. A contained problem was better than a loose one. She burst from the room, Nolan at her heels, and slammed the main door shut. Cassandra heard the bar drop again, but it sounded flimsy now, a token gesture against the chaos outside. Alone. Again. But now the walls themselves seemed to be screaming. Cassandra stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. The sounds of the battle were getting closer. A body thudded against the hallway wall outside her door. A pained yelp was cut short. The scent of blood seeped under the door. Hide. Allison's command was the only thread of sense in the maelstrom. Cassandra dropped to her knees and scrambled under the narrow bed, pressing herself into the far corner against the wall. The space was tight, dusty. She pulled the hanging edge of the bed cover down to shield herself, creating a dark, cramped cocoon. She heard the connecting door to Preston's room burst open. Heavy footsteps entered. Not Preston's assured stride. These were lumbering, predatory. A low, inquisitive snuffling filled the room. The Ridge Walker was in here. Cassandra clamped a hand over her mouth, stifling the whimper that fought its way up her throat. She could see nothing but the floorboards and a pair of heavy, muddy boots moving slowly across the rug. The snuffling continued. He was scenting the air. He would find her. It was only a matter of seconds. The boots stopped right beside the bed. A clawed hand, knuckles hairy and fingers tipped with thick, dirty nails, reached down and gripped the edge of the bed cover. Cassandra squeezed her eyes shut. A silent scream locked in her chest. A thunderous impact shook the entire lodge. It came from the common room, a crash so profound it felt like a tree had fallen through the roof. It was followed by a roar that Cassandra recognized, a sound of absolute, untamed authority that cut through the din of battle. Preston, the Ridge Walker by the bed, froze. A low growl of uncertainty rumbled in its throat. The clawed hand released the bed cover. Another roar, closer now. Preston was in the lodge, clearing a path. The sound was one of pure, unadulterated vengeance. The Ridge Walker turned and fled back through the connecting door, crashing through Preston's quarters to escape. For a moment, there was relative quiet outside her main door. Just the moans of the wounded and the crackle of disturbed fire. Then, the bar was lifted. The door opened. Preston filled the doorway. He was splattered with dark blood, none of it his own. His shirt was torn, his eyes blazed with a feral, golden light. The power rolled off him in waves, a physical pressure in the small room. He looked like a god of war, stepped out of a nightmare. His gaze swept the empty room, the disheveled bed, and landed unerringly on the slight shift in the bed cover. The fury in his eyes didn't soften, but it focused, sharpened into a single razor-point intent. He crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt. His hand, still warm and wet with the blood of her would-be captors, reached under the bed. He didn't yank her out. He simply waited, his palm open. Trembling uncontrollably, Cassandra placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, an anchor in the storm. He pulled her gently but inexorably from her hiding place and to her feet. She was covered in dust, her face streaked with tears of terror, shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. He looked down at her, his chest heaving. The battle light still danced in his eyes. He raised his other hand and brushed a smudge of dirt from her cheek with his thumb, the gesture terrifyingly intimate amidst the carnage. His voice, when it came, was a rough, dark caress that vibrated through her bones. "They," he growled, the word thick with promise, "tried to take what is mine." Outside, Allison's voice shouted, "Preston, they're retreating, but we have wounded. Liam is missing from the Moon Pen." But Preston didn't seem to hear. His world had narrowed to the terrified human woman in his grasp. The claim was no longer implicit. It was declared to her, to his pack, to any who would dare listen. And as Cassandra stared into his wild, possessive eyes, she knew one thing with utter, chilling certainty. The real battle for her had just begun. The word hung in the air, a possessive anchor in the storm of violence. Mine. It wasn't a question. It was a law carved into the very air between Preston's heaving chest and Cassandra's frozen form. The lodge was a symphony of destruction. Groaning wood, distant snarls, the coppery scent of blood. But in that moment, all she heard was that single, devastating syllable. If only I had known then what that word truly meant in his world. What it would cost. A sharp, pained shout from the common room shattered the moment. Preston's head snapped toward the sound, his body tensing, but his grip on her arm didn't loosen. It was a brand. "Nolan," Preston growled, more to himself than to her. His eyes, still blazing with that unearthly amber light, scanned her face as if memorizing it. "You will stay here. You will not move. This is not over." He released her so abruptly she stumbled back against the splintered door frame. Without another word, he turned and melted back into the chaotic gloom of the hallway, a shadow among shadows. The sounds of a brief, brutal scuffle echoed. A yelp, a sickening crunch, then silence. Cassandra slid down the wall, her legs giving out. The rough wood snagged her sweater. She hugged her knees, trying to make herself small. Mine. Bradley had said that too, in his own way. A possessive hand on her lower back at a party, a text that read, "You're mine, don't forget." But this was different. This wasn't the jealousy of a man. This was the primal, territorial declaration of a predator. She was no longer just a witness or a liability. She was property. The sounds of battle outside the lodge gradually diminished, replaced by the low, urgent voices of the Blackwood Pack regrouping. Moans of pain, sharp orders, the heavy thud of bodies being dragged. After what felt like an hour, but was likely only minutes, footsteps approached. Not Preston's predatory silence, but a measured, weary tread. Nolan appeared in the doorway. His shirt was torn, and a fresh, bloody gash ran from his temple to his jaw. He looked at her, huddled on the floor, and his expression was unreadable. "Up," he said, his voice hoarse. "Alpha's orders. You're being moved." "Moved where?" Cassandra's voice was a rasp. "Somewhere more secure." He didn't elaborate, simply stepped aside and waited. She pushed herself up, every muscle protesting. Nolan didn't touch her, just led the way through the ravaged common room. The scene was a nightmare. Overturned furniture, deep claw marks gouged into the log walls, and dark, wet stains on the rug. A few pack members were tending to wounds. They all stopped to stare as she passed. Their eyes weren't just hostile now, they were haunted, accusatory. Allison stood near the fireplace, applying a bandage to a younger female's arm. Her gaze locked with Cassandra's, and the hatred there was a physical force. "See what you've brought us," it screamed, just like the last one. Nolan led her not back toward the stone cellar, but down a different, narrower hallway at the rear of the lodge. The air grew warmer, carrying a faint, clean scent of pine soap and something else, something wild and essential that she now recognized as Preston. They stopped before a heavy oak door. "His quarters," Nolan said flatly. He opened the door and gestured for her to enter. The room was stark, dominated by a large bed frame with a simple mattress and rough wool blankets. A single sturdy desk and chair stood under a window shuttered from the outside. A door, slightly ajar, led to a small, dark bathroom. There were no personal effects, no photos, no books. It was the den of a soldier, not a home. "I'm to stay in here?" Cassandra asked, disbelief cutting through her shock. "The Alpha's connected room is through there," Nalan said, nodding to a second, more solid-looking door on the far wall. "This is the most defensible place in the lodge. His orders are clear. You are to remain here until he comes for you. Food and water will be brought. Do not attempt to leave. And if I do..." Nalan's tired eyes met hers. "Then you will meet the guards posted outside this hallway, and they are in no mood for disobedience. The Ridge Walkers killed 2 of ours tonight. The Moon Pen was sabotaged. Liam is missing." He delivered the news with brutal efficiency, each sentence a hammer blow. "Your scent started a war. Your presence in our territory cost lives. In here, you are under the Alpha's direct protection. Out there," he left the threat hanging. "The lock will engage from the outside. Do not test it." He stepped back, pulling the door shut. The solid thunk of a deadbolt sliding home was the most final sound she had ever heard. Silence. Not true silence. The lodge creaked and settled. Muffled voices argued somewhere. But in this room, she was alone with the echo of Preston's claim and the crushing weight of her new reality. She was a prisoner in the Alpha's own suite, a prized possession under lock and key. Time lost meaning. A tray with bread, cheese, and a tin cup of water was shoved through a small slot at the bottom of the door sometime later. She ate mechanically, her ears straining for any sound from the adjoining room. Preston's room. It remained silent. She paced the limited space, her mind a trapped bird. Liam is missing. The transformed guard who had called her mine in the cellar was now gone, unleashed by the attack. Was he out there in the woods, a beast driven by the moon and his last, fractured memory of her scent? The thought chilled her blood, more than the Ridge Walkers. The shutter on her window was bolted shut from the outside, but through a thin crack she could see the night sky beginning to pale. Dawn was coming. The attack was over. The consequences were just beginning. What happened next changed everything. The connecting door opened. Cassandra spun around, heart leaping into her throat. Preston stood in the doorway. He had washed, his dark hair was damp, and he wore a fresh, gray Henley that stretched across his broad shoulders. But he couldn't wash away the fatigue etched into his face or the fresh, angry scratches that raked across his neck. The civilized clothing did nothing to mask the predator beneath. He didn't speak at first. His amber eyes swept over her, assessing, owning. The silence was a pressure. "2 of my pack are dead," he said finally, his voice a low rumble. "The Ridge Walkers used the chaos of the moon and your scent at the den as a perfect excuse. They've been looking for a provocation. You gave them a gift." Cassandra's throat tightened. "I didn't mean to. I was just running. From a man." Preston stepped fully into the room, making the space feel impossibly small. "A man who claimed you, and now you've run into my territory and I have claimed you. Do you see the pattern, Cassandra Vale? I'm not a thing to be claimed." The words burst from her, fueled by a day of terror. A low, warning growl vibrated in his chest. "You are in my world now. Human rules do not apply. You are a witness to our kind. You are a catalyst for war. By our laws, Allison is right. You should be dead." He took another step closer. The wild, clean scent of him enveloped her. "But you are not dead, because I say you are not. You are mine to protect or mine to end. That is the only law that matters for you now." "Why?" she whispered, the fight draining out of her, replaced by a desperate need to understand. "Why would you do this? Your pack hates me. It's causing you nothing but trouble." Preston's gaze burned into her. For a long moment, he seemed to war with himself. The alpha, calculating. The man, revealing. The moment I caught your scent in the clearing, before I even saw you, it was like a hook in my gut, he said, the words raw, stripped of pretense. It was not just that you were human. It was you. Your fear, your defiance, it called to something. Something I cannot ignore even if I wished to. My wolf recognized you, and it does not let go of what it recognizes. Her breath hitched. His wolf, the beast within him. It had chosen her. The concept was too enormous, too terrifying to fully grasp. "And what does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It means the Ridge Walkers didn't just attack my territory tonight. They tried to take what is under my protection, what is mine." He closed the final distance between them. He didn't touch her, but his heat was palpable. "They have made this personal. They have seen that you are a vulnerability. They will try again." A cold dread seeped into her bones. "What are you going to do?" "I am going to end this," he stated, absolute certainty in his tone. "But to do that, I cannot be distracted by guarding a single, fragile human in a locked room. The pack's faith is shaken. Allison's faction grows louder. I need them united. I need them focused on the true enemy." Cassandra's mind raced, trying to follow his logic. "So, you'll let me go?" The spark of hope was instantly foolish, and she knew it. A dark, humorless smile touched his lips. "No, you will undergo the rite of the claimed." The words meant nothing to her, but the gravity with which he said them made her blood run cold. "What is that?" "A ceremony, an old one. It will bind your safety to my authority in the eyes of the pack. It will make your protection not just my whim, but a matter of pack law and honor. They will be bound to protect you as an extension of their alpha. And the Ridge Walkers will know that touching you is not just an act of war, but a direct, mortal insult to me, one that demands total retaliation." It sounded medieval, terrifying. "Bind how? What do I have to do?" Preston finally raised a hand, but only to brush a strand of hair from her face. The contact was electric, a jolt that was equal parts fear and something else, something deep and traitorous. "You must choose to stay," he said, his eyes holding hers captive. "Before the full pack under the moon, you must willingly accept my claim. You must swear to keep our secrets. In return, you receive my protection and the pack's until the threat is ended." Choice, it was an illusion, and they both knew it. The alternative was what? Being handed over to Allison's justice, being cast out into the woods where the Ridge Walkers or Liam waited. "And after," she breathed, "when the threat is ended." His thumb traced the line of her jaw, a gesture of possession so intimate it stole her breath. "Then we will see. The bond may fade, or it may not." He leaned in, his lips close to her ear. His next words were a whisper, for her alone. "My wolf does not let go, Cassandra. It wants to keep you." He straightened, the alpha mask sliding back into place. "The moon rises again tomorrow night. You have until then to decide. But understand this. If you refuse the right, I cannot override the pack's will for you a second time. Allison will have her way. This room is not just your protection. It is your last sanctuary." He turned and walked back to the connecting door, pausing on the threshold. "Think carefully. Your human life is over. The only question is what kind of life comes next." The door closed behind him, leaving her more alone than ever before. The weight of his ultimatum crushed her. She was to publicly bind herself to her captor, to legitimize his possession, just to survive. It was a devil's bargain. The sounds from the lodge had quieted to a somber murmur, a pack licking its wounds. She was the source of those wounds. Could a ceremony change that, or would it just make her a bigger target? As the gray light of dawn finally filtered through the crack in the shutter, a new sound reached her, a slow, rhythmic scraping against the outside wall of the lodge just below her window. Scritch, scrape, paws like claws on stone. Her blood froze. She crept to the wall, pressing her ear against the cold wood. The scraping stopped. A low, familiar whine drifted up, filled with a twisted kind of longing. Then a guttural, barely intelligible whisper carried on the rising wind. "Mine!" It was Liam, and he was right outside. The scratching stopped. The whispered, guttural mine hung in the cold air just beyond the glass, a phantom promise. Cassandra froze, her own breath a trapped cloud in the dawn light. She waited, muscles locked, for the window to shatter. But only silence followed, deep and absolute. If only she had known that silence was a lie. It wasn't an end. It was a gathering. A heavy lock turned in the main door to her room. Nolan entered, his face a mask of grim duty. He carried a tray, simple food, a pitcher of water. His eyes, however, scanned the room, lingering on the window. "You heard it," he stated, not asking. "Was it him?" Cassandra's voice was raw. "Liam's scent is all over the perimeter. The moon's hold is still strong in him. He's hunting." Nolan set the tray down. "The Alpha's orders stand. You stay here, you eat, you prepare." "Prepare for what?" "A ceremony. I don't understand, or a monster at the window." "For the choice you have to make," Nolan said, his tone softening a fraction. "Allison is gathering the pack in the common room. They're restless. The funerals for Marcus and Jax are at sundown. Their blood is on the Ridge Walker's claws, but their deaths are tied to your scent. That's the story being told." He left, the lock clicking shut with a sound of finality. The food was tasteless, but Cassandra forced it down, her mind racing. The right of the claimed, Preston's wolf recognizing her. It was madness. Yet the alternative was Allison's cold justice, a concept that now had the faces of two dead wolves attached to it. The door connecting to Preston's quarters opened without warning. He filled the space, still wearing the same clothes from the night's battle, smelling of pine, iron, and power. His gaze went immediately to the window. "He was here," Preston said. "You knew he would be." "I suspected. The transformed mind is single-minded. It fixates. He fixated on you before the change, and now his beast has the scent." Preston turned his golden eyes on her. "It makes my offer more urgent, not less. The right would place my mark upon you in the old way. It would scream to every wolf, especially to one lost to the moon, that you are under the Alpha's protection. To touch you is to challenge me." Cassandra wrapped her arms around herself. "And what does this right require? Do I get branded? Do I have to drink something?" A low, humorless rumble escaped his chest. "It requires your voice, your public, voluntary acceptance of my claim and your place under the protection of the Blackwood Alpha. It is a ceremony of words and witness, binding under pack law. My wolf has already made its choice. The right is for them." He jerked his head toward the common room. "And for you, to make your choice real. You're asking me to choose my jailer," she whispered. "I'm asking you to choose life, Cassandra. A life with protections Bradley could never breach. A life where a wolf like Liam would recoil from your scent in terror, not hunger." He took a step closer, the air crackling. "What happened in that clearing when I first saw you? My wolf didn't see a trespasser. It saw a thread of fate. I cannot ignore it, even if I wished to." The connection between them sparked again, a live wire of tension that was part fear, part something else entirely, something deep and terrifyingly magnetic. She wanted to recoil and step forward all at once. "What happens after?" she asked. "If I say the words, what am I then?" His gaze intensified. "You are claimed. You live under my roof by my law. You would have the freedom of the lodge and its guarded grounds. Your safety becomes my paramount duty. In return, you abide by pack edicts. You become part of the territory." "A prized pet," she said, the bitterness clear. "A protected asset," he corrected, his voice dropping. And perhaps in time more, the wolf does not claim lightly or without purpose. Before she could process that, a sharp, collective howl of grief tore through the morning quiet. It was a sound of raw, communal agony. Preston's head snapped up, his body tensing. "The pyres are being prepared," he said, the alpha fully surfacing in his demeanor. "You will be brought to the common room at noon. You will hear the pack's anger. You will look upon the faces of those who blame you. Then you will give me your answer before the full assembly." He turned to leave. "Choose wisely, Cassandra Vale. The beast outside your window is not the only danger in these woods." He was gone, the connecting door closing softly. The mournful howls continued, a chilling soundtrack to her isolation. She was a focal point, a symbol of loss, a key to unity. The weight of it was crushing. Noon arrived with the scrape of the lock. Nolan was there again, but this time Allison stood beside him. The female wolf's eyes were red-rimmed, her expression carved from stone. "Come," Allison said, the word a command. "It's time you saw the cost of your curiosity." The common room was transformed. The long tables were pushed against the walls. The entire pack, perhaps 30 men and women, stood in a loose semicircle. The air was thick with the scent of anger, sorrow, and a sharp, coppery tension. Every eye locked onto Cassandra as she entered, flanked by Nolan and trailed by Allison. The hatred was a physical force. Preston stood at the head of the room, an imposing figure of authority. He gave no sign of their earlier conversation, his face an alpha's mask. Allison stepped forward, her voice cutting through the silence. "This human," she spat the word, "was found at Silver Creek. Her scent was a beacon. The Ridge Walkers used it as their excuse to cross our lines, to breach our home, to kill our brothers." She turned, pointing a trembling finger at Cassandra. "Marcus and Jax are dead because she wandered where she did not belong, just like the last human. The traitor. Or have we forgotten my brother's face?" A growl rippled through the pack. Cassandra stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could feel the collective desire for vengeance like a heat on her skin. "Enough, Allison." Preston's voice was quiet, but it silenced the growls instantly. "The fault lies with the Ridge Walkers who attacked, and with our own perimeter guards who were caught unaware. The human is a catalyst, not a warrior." She did not wield the claws. "She may as well have," a man shouted from the crowd. Preston's gaze swept over them. "Her fate is not for the mob to decide. It is for the alpha to decree under the old laws." He focused on Cassandra, his eyes burning. "Cassandra Vale, you have heard the accusation. You stand in the heart of the Blackwood Pack. The right of the claimed has been offered. Acceptance grants you my protection and a place within these walls, your safety bound to my authority. Refusal places you outside that protection, subject to the Pack's justice for the bloodshed your presence incited." He paused, letting the ultimatum sink into the stifling air. "What is your answer?" The room held its breath. Allison's stare was a dagger. Nolan watched, impassive. The pack waited, a sea of hostile faces. Cassandra's mouth was desert dry. She thought of Bradley's smothering possession, a gilded cage of jealousy and control. She thought of Liam's transformed whisper at the window, a beast's primal claim. And she looked at Preston, who offered a cage of a different kind, one of stone and law and terrifying, instinctual recognition. Both were prisons, but one had a key labeled survival. She swallowed. Her voice, when it came, was small but clear in the silent room. "I accept." A shockwave of sound erupted, growls of outrage, sharp cries of disbelief. Allison took a furious step forward, only to be halted by a single, devastating look from Preston. A look that promised swift and total violence. "She has chosen," Preston announced, his voice booming over the din. The rite will be performed at moonrise tonight. By pack law and my word, from this moment forward, she is under my protection. Any harm to her is a direct challenge to your alpha. Is that understood?" The pack's response was a grudging, low murmur of assent. The law was clear, even if they despised it. "Dismissed," Preston commanded. "Prepare for the funerals." As the pack began to disperse, shooting venomous glances her way, Preston approached Cassandra. He leaned close, his words for her alone. "That took courage. Do not think it is over. The rite must be witnessed. And after, we will deal with the other beast that claims you." The afternoon bled away, tense and quiet. Cassandra was returned to her room. The tray from breakfast was replaced with another. This one held a simple, dark gray tunic and pants, clearly meant for the ceremony. The reality of her decision settled on her like a lead weight. She had traded one doom for another, hoping the devil she didn't know was marginally better. As dusk approached, painting the sky in funeral hues of purple and orange, the sounds from outside changed. The scent of smoke and cedar carried on the wind. Chants, low and rhythmic, began. The funerals had started. Cassandra went to the window, seeing the distant, flickering light of twin pyres at the edge of the clearing. The haunting beauty of the werewolves' morning songs sent shivers down her spine. She was the unspoken dirge beneath their official grief. The connecting door opened. Preston entered, now dressed in a dark, ceremonial vest over his shirt, his presence even more commanding. "It is time," he said. "The moon is rising." He led her not back to the common room, but out a side door of the lodge into the cold night. The pack was assembled in a circle around a flat, ancient-looking stone in a small clearing behind the lodge. Torches flickered, casting dancing shadows on solemn faces. The pyres still burned in the distance, a grim backdrop. Allison stood at the forefront, her expression unreadable. Nolan was beside her. Preston guided Cassandra to the center, beside the stone. The full moon, huge and white, broke over the treetops. Its light felt like a physical touch, a cold scrutiny. "Pack of Blackwood," Preston's voice rolled out, deep and resonant. "You gather as witnesses. A human, Cassandra Vale, has voluntarily accepted the claim of your alpha. By the old laws, she seeks sanctuary and protection beneath the wolf's shadow. Do you bear witness?" "We bear witness," the pack intoned, the words unified but lifeless. Preston turned to Cassandra. His eyes were molten gold in the torchlight, the wolf so close to the surface. "Cassandra Vale, do you, of your own free will, place your life and safety under my authority, the alpha of the Blackwood Pack? Do you accept my claim and swear to abide by the laws of the territory that now shelters you?" This was it, the point of no return. She felt the eyes of the pack, Allison's icy stare, the weight of the moon. She thought of the whispering beast still out there. She found Preston's gaze and for a second saw not just the ruthless alpha, but the man who had confessed his wolf's inexplicable recognition. "I do," she said, her voice stronger now. "Then by moon and stone, by blood and law, it is done." Preston reached out. He didn't touch her neck as she'd feared. Instead, his thumbs swept across her lower lip, a shockingly intimate gesture. A small, deliberate scratch from a carefully extended claw, a single bead of weld, a spot of crimson in the moonlight. He brought his thumb to his own mouth, a primal, sealing act. "You are claimed." A collective, involuntary shudder seemed to go through the pack. The rite was complete. The tension in the circle shifted, hardening from outrage to a sullen, legalistic acceptance. What happened next changed everything. As the final words faded, a new sound ripped through the night, not a chant, not a howl of grief, but a roar of pure, bestial rage. It came from the tree line, shockingly close. Every head turned. Every wolf shifted into a defensive stance. Liam, or the creature he had become, stood at the edge of the torchlight. He was massive, fur matted with leaves and dirt, eyes glowing with feral moon madness. His muzzle was pulled back in a snarl, dripping saliva, and his burning gaze was fixed solely on Cassandra. He took a heavy, ground-shaking step forward, ignoring the alpha, ignoring the entire pack. A deep, guttural growl vibrated the air. "Mine!" Preston moved with blinding speed, shoving Cassandra behind him and facing the transformed guard. "Liam, you will stand down, she is claimed." The beast roared again, the sound full of denial and possessive fury. It charged. Preston met the charge, a collision of muscle and fury that was terrifying to behold. He was in human form, yet he moved with preternatural strength, grappling with the monstrous wolf. The pack surged forward, but Preston shouted, "Hold! He is pack, this is my fight." It was a brutal, chaotic dance. Claws ripped. Snarls filled the air. Cassandra watched, paralyzed, as Preston, in an incredible display of dominance, managed to get an arm around the beast's throat, applying pressure. The wolf thrashed, its eyes rolling, still fixated on her over Preston's shoulder. "Mine!" it gurgled, the word barely. With a final, wrenching heave, Preston slammed the beast to the ground, his knee on its chest, his face inches from the slavering muzzle. "No!" he roared, his alpha power flooding the clearing like a shockwave. "SHE is mine." The transformed Liam whimpered, the madness in its eyes flickering with a shadow of the man, of ingrained pack obedience. The fight bled out of it, replaced by confusion and submissive fear. Panting, Preston looked up at Nolan. "The silver chains to the moon pen, now!" As Nolan and others rushed forward with heavy chains, Preston stood, his knuckles bleeding. He looked back at Cassandra, his chest heaving. The message was clear. The right was not just for the pack. It was a line in the sand for every threat, internal or external. But the revelation came not from him. It came from Allison. As the subdued beast was dragged away, Allison was staring not at Liam, but at the tree line behind where he had emerged. Her nostrils flared. She took a few steps forward, then bent down, picking something up from the mud. She turned, her face pale in the torchlight, all her hatred momentarily eclipsed by sheer, stunned confusion. In her hand was a shredded piece of dark fabric, not from Blackwood attire. And pinned to it, glinting in the firelight, was a distinctive, enameled badge, a stylized mountain ridge. She held it up, her eyes finding Preston's, then sliding to Cassandra with dawning, horrific suspicion. "Ridge Walker insignia," Allison said, her voice hollow. "It's caught on his claws. He's covered in their scent and fresh blood that isn't his." She paused, the next words dropping like stones into the silent clearing. Liam wasn't just lost to the moon. He was in a fight, with them, after the attack. She looked directly at Cassandra, her accusation now laced with a new, even more dangerous terror. How did the Ridge Walkers get close enough to our missing guard to fight him, unless they were already inside our territory? And why was he between them and you? The Ridge Walker insignia, a crude iron wolf's head, lay in Allison's palm like a poisoned offering. The clearing was silent, save for the crackle of the funeral pyres and Liam's ragged, unconscious breaths. Every pair of eyes, amber, gold, gray, swiveled from the damning metal to me. If I thought their hatred was cold before, it was now a glacial, calculating thing. The accusation had shifted. I was no longer just a harbinger of death. I was a conspirator. What happened next changed everything. "He fought them," Preston said, his voice a low rumble that cut through the silence. He straightened from where he'd subdued Liam, his knuckles bleeding. "That's Ridge Walker blood on his claws. Their scent is all over him, fresh, less than an hour old. Or he met with them, Allison countered, her gaze never leaving mine. He was moon-mad, fixated on the human. Perhaps they offered him a way to get to her. A trade. Information for a prize. Liam is loyal, Nolan said, but his voice lacked its usual iron conviction. He was staring at his fallen packmate with pained confusion. He was loyal, Allison corrected. Before the moon stole his mind, before she jabbed a finger toward me, became a beacon for his madness. We know the Ridge Walkers use weakness. They exploited the last human's fear. Why not a guard's madness? Preston stepped between Allison's pointing finger and me, a wall of muscle and authority. The movement was instinctive, possessive. The cut on my wrist, where his blood had mingled with mine in the right, throbbed in time with my heartbeat. He is Blackwood. He is wounded. Nolan, secure him in the reinforced cells beneath the lodge. Post 2 guards you trust with your life. He does not wake alone. Nolan gave a sharp nod and gestured to 2 others. They hauled Liam's limp form away, the scent of foreign blood and fury trailing behind them. Preston then turned his attention to the insignia. He plucked it from Allison's hand. This isn't just carried. It's torn, ripped from a leather strap or a jacket. He held it up to the moonlight, examining the broken leather still threaded through the clasp. He didn't receive this. He took it in a fight. A fight that happened inside our territory after we repelled their main attack, Allison pressed. Which means they never fully left. They're still here, sniffing around. And the only thing that's changed, the only new scent drawing lines in the forest, is hers. Her words hung in the air, a logic trap closing around me. I was the bait, the disturbance, the reason. Preston's jaw tightened. He closed his fist around the Iron Wolf's head. All pack members double patrols, rework the perimeter with overlapping shifts. No one runs alone. The Ridge Walkers are testing us, using the chaos of the moon and our grief as cover. His eyes swept the assembled pack, a leader reforging their purpose. We are not prey, we are the forest. They will learn that again in blood. The pack dispersed with a low chorus of growls and acknowledgments, melting into the trees with lethal purpose. The tension in the clearing eased by a fraction, but the weight on me did not. Allison lingered, her stare a physical coldness on my skin. The right is done, Alpha, she said, the title sharp on her tongue. She is claimed, but the law is clear. A claimed one who knowingly brings harm to the pack, who conspires with enemies, the protection is forfeit. The penalty is death. I know the law, Allison, Preston said, his voice dangerously soft. Do you? She shot back. Your wolf may have chosen, but ours are howling for justice. Marcus and Jax are ash. Liam is broken, and the enemy is in our woods. The common denominator stands right there, smelling of fear and human soap. She finally broke her gaze from me to look at him, a deep, old pain in her eyes. My brother smelled like Ridge Walker blood too, before they left him in pieces at the border. History doesn't just repeat, Preston. It escalates. She turned and walked away, following the path to the pyres, a solitary figure shrouded in grief and certainty. The silence she left behind was deafening. I could hear the pop of burning wood, the distant call of an owl, the frantic drum of my own heart. Preston's hand wrapped around my upper arm, his touch firm, grounding, and inescapable. "Inside," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for question. He didn't take me back to the side room. He guided me through the main lodge common room, past wary, gleaming eyes, and directly to the door connecting to his private quarters. He unlocked it, pushed me through into my stark cell, and followed, closing the door behind him. For the first time, he was in the space with me, making it feel impossibly smaller. The sounds of the lodge, muffled voices, the clang of a weapon being checked, seeped through the walls. "You heard her," I whispered, my voice cracking. "They all think I'm a spy or a signal fire." Preston paced the short length of the room, a caged predator. "What I think," he said, stopping to face me, "is that the Ridge Walkers are more cunning than we credited. They attacked us head-on to gauge our strength, to draw our focus. And while we were busy burying our dead and securing the main lodge, a smaller, quieter team stayed behind. To observe, to exploit an opportunity." "Liam," I breathed. "Liam," he confirmed. His madness made him unpredictable, a loose thread. They may have tried to use him, or he may have simply stumbled across them. But their presence and his fixation on you created a perfect storm. Now the pack sees a traitorous guard and a human catalyst. It's a story that feeds their anger, neatly packaged. If only I had known how deep the story went. "So what do I do?" I asked, hugging myself. "The right was supposed to protect me." "It does," he said, moving closer. In the dim light from the high window, his features were all harsh angles and shadow. "It binds my protection to you, but it also binds you to our laws. Allison is right about that. If evidence emerges that you have communicated with the Ridge Walkers, that you led Bradley here as some form of twisted revenge, even I could not overturn the penalty." "I haven't. I was running from him, I told you." "I believe you," he interrupted, and the raw certainty in his voice stunned me silent. "My wolf believes you. It has from the moment I caught your scent at Silver Creek. It's not just desire. It's a recognition, a knowing. That's why this claim is not a political strategy. It's an inevitability." He was so close now I could feel the heat radiating from him, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. The throbbing in my wrist intensified, a phantom pulled toward him. "Then why does it feel like I'm in more danger now than when I was in the cellar?" The question was a plea. "Because you are," he stated bluntly. "The cellar was a physical prison. This," he gestured between us, then at the walls, "is a political and social one. You are now a piece on the pack's board, and everyone is deciding how to play you. Allison will be gathering support, looking for any scrap of proof to condemn you. The Ridge Walkers, if they are out there watching, now know you are of significant value to me. That makes you a prime target for capture or elimination." A cold shiver traced my spine. "Bradley is another variable," Preston finished, his eyes narrowing. "A human obsessed, drawn to the chaos like a moth to a flame. Your scent is a trail he could follow. His presence in my territory would be a complication I do not need. The sheer number of forces converging on me, the pack's hatred, the rival wolves' schemes, Bradley's relentless pursuit, made the room spin." I stumbled back until my shoulders hit the cold stone wall. The sound of a firm, rapid knock on the outer door to Preston's quarters echoed through the connecting door. "Alpha!" It was Nolan's voice, tense. Preston's gaze lingered on me for a second longer, a silent promise of something I couldn't decipher, before he turned and left, locking the door behind him. I heard the murmur of voices through the thick wood, too low to make out words. The cadence was urgent. I slid down the wall to sit on the floor, drawing my knees to my chest. The scent of pine and Preston lingered in the air, mixed with the faint, metallic trace of blood from the right. I stared at the small, bandaged cut on my wrist. A recognition, he'd said. What did that mean? Why did his certainty feel like the only solid ground in a world that was crumbling? The murmur outside stopped. A moment later, the connecting door unlocked and opened. Preston stood there, his expression grim. "Liam is awake," he said. Hope, frail and desperate, flickered in me. "Can he tell you what happened? Can he clear me?" "He's not speaking. Not in any way that makes sense. He's fragmented. The moon's hold is still on him, though it's waning. He just keeps repeating two things." Preston's eyes locked onto mine. "He says mine. And he says the woman in the pictures." The floor dropped out from under me. The woman in the pictures, my breath hitched. My portfolio. The one I'd dropped at Silver Creek when they'd caught me. It had been in my backpack. My photographs, I whispered. Nolan retrieved your bag from the evidence locker, Preston said. The Ridge walkers never touched it. Our people secured it after your capture. He stepped back into his room and returned, holding my familiar, worn leather portfolio. He offered it to me. Liam shouldn't have seen this. It was under lock and key. Explain. My hands trembled as I took it. I hugged it to my chest, a piece of my old life, now feeling like a piece of evidence. It's my work, my final project. It's a series on urban isolation. Portraits of people in the city, feeling alone in crowds. I opened the flap. The familiar sleeves of acetate and matte bore to comfort. I flipped past a few. An old man on a park bench, a young woman reflected in a rainy cafe window. My hands trembled as I took it. I hugged it to my chest, a piece of my old life, now feeling like a piece of evidence. It's my work, my final project. It's a series on urban isolation. Portraits of people in the city, feeling alone in crowds. I opened the flap. The familiar sleeves of acetate and matte bore to comfort. I flipped past a few. An old man on a park bench, a young woman reflected in a rainy cafe window. Then I stopped. The next sleeve was empty. Then I stopped. The next sleeve was empty. The photograph that belonged there was gone. It was the strongest one in the series. A self-portrait of sorts. I'd used a long exposure and a mirror. It showed me Cassandra turned away, a blurred figure of solitude, but in the mirror's reflection, over my shoulder, was the faint, looming silhouette of Bradley. He hadn't known I'd taken it. It was my secret testament to the feeling of being watched, hunted. The photograph that belonged there was gone. It was the strongest one in the series. A self-portrait of sorts. I'd used a long exposure and a mirror. It showed me Cassandra turned away, a blurred figure of solitude, but in the mirror's reflection, over my shoulder, was the faint, looming silhouette of Bradley. He hadn't known I'd taken it. It was my secret testament to the feeling of being watched, hunted. It's gone, I said, my voice hollow. One of them is missing. Preston was beside me in an instant, looking down at the empty sleeve. Which one? I told him. I described the image, the composition, the meaning. And most crucially, the clear, identifiable depiction of Bradley's face and form in the mirror's reflection. It's gone, I said, my voice hollow. One of them is missing. Preston was beside me in an instant, looking down at the empty sleeve. Which one? I told him. I described the image, the composition, the meaning. And most crucially, the clear, identifiable depiction of Bradley's face and form in the mirror's reflection. Preston went very, very still. Your possessive ex, a clear image of him, taken from your personal effects. He spoke slowly, piecing it together. Liam is repeating the woman in the pictures. He's moon-mad, his mind reduced to primal impulses. He wouldn't care about artistic themes. He'd fixate on an image of you, and of the man following you. A terrible understanding began to dawn. You think the Ridge walkers have it. Preston went very, very still. Your possessive ex, a clear image of him, taken from your personal effects. He spoke slowly, piecing it together. Liam is repeating the woman in the pictures. He's moon-mad, his mind reduced to primal impulses. He wouldn't care about artistic themes. He'd fixate on an image of you, and of the man following you. A terrible understanding began to dawn. You think the Ridge walkers have it. I think, Preston said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper, that when Liam encountered them in the woods, they didn't just fight. They showed him something. They used it. A picture of you and a man who is not me. To a wolf mad with possessive instinct, that could be seen as a challenge, a rival. It would have enraged him, focused his madness perfectly. They pointed his fury like a weapon. I think, Preston said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper, that when Liam encountered them in the woods, they didn't just fight. They showed him something. They used it. A picture of you and a man who is not me. To a wolf mad with possessive instinct, that could be seen as a challenge, a rival. It would have enraged him, focused his madness perfectly. They pointed his fury like a weapon. But why, to have him kill me? He tried that anyway. No, Preston said, his eyes blazing with cold fury. To have him kill Bradley, to have a Blackwood wolf in a frenzy murder a human on our territory. It's a perfect provocation. It would bring human authorities down on us like a hammer. It would break the pack. The Ridge Walkers wouldn't just win the territory, they'd erase us. But why, to have him kill me? He tried that anyway. No, Preston said, his eyes blazing with cold fury. To have him kill Bradley, to have a Blackwood wolf in a frenzy murder a human on our territory. It's a perfect provocation. It would bring human authorities down on us like a hammer. It would break the pack. The Ridge Walkers wouldn't just win the territory, they'd erase us. The horror of it was elegant and monstrous. I was a tool, Bradley was a pawn, and Liam was an unwitting executioner. The missing photograph was the key. The sound of a distant, rising commotion filtered through the lodge, shouts, a snarl, the slam of a door. Preston's head snapped up, listening. His nostrils flared. Nolan's voice shouted from the common room, sharp with alarm. Alpha, perimeter breach, South Ridge Trail, it's a human. He's armed and he's shouting her name. Bradley. He'd found me. He'd walked right into the trap. Preston moved with explosive speed. He grabbed my arm, his grip iron. They led him here. They used his obsession and you're sent to guide him in. Now they'll be waiting for Liam to finish the job. He pulled me toward the connecting door, not to his room, but to a shadowed corner of mine where the stone wall seemed seamless. He pressed a hidden knot in the wood paneling, and a section of the wall, so cleverly disguised I'd never have seen it, swung inward with a soft groan of old hinges. A dark, narrow passage, smelling of damp earth and cold stone, yawned before us. Where does it go? I gasped. Away to a bolt hole in the old growth. It's how alphas survive. He pushed me into the darkness. Run, don't stop, don't look back. I have to control my pack and intercept that fool human before Liam or the Ridge Walkers do. But the right your claim is why I'm sending you to safety instead of locking you in. He growled, the alpha command vibrating in his chest. The pack cannot see me prioritize you over a direct threat now. Go, he thrust a heavy, cylindrical object into my hands, a cold metal flashlight. From the common room, the sounds of chaos grew. Bradley's voice, faint but unmistakable, screaming, Cassandra. The growls of wolves, Allison shouting orders. Preston, I started. His hand cupped my cheek, a startling, brief gesture of possession and desperation. My wolf chose you. Now run. He swung the hidden door shut, plunging me into absolute blackness. The last thing I heard was the solid thud of the stone sealing me in, followed by the roar of Preston's transformation, tearing through the air on the other side of the wall. Alone in the dark, the beam of the flashlight shaking in my hand, I had one path, forward into the unknown earth. The walls of the passage were close, dripping with moisture. I could hear, through layers of stone and soil, the muffled, terrifying symphony of the hunt above, the snarls of wolves, a human scream that was abruptly cut off, and a single, triumphant, familiar howl that didn't sound like Preston at all. It sounded like Liam, and he was close. The human scream cut off, swallowed by the forest and the triumphant, chilling howl that followed. Cassandra froze in the tunnel's pitch black, the sound of Liam's victory echoing in her bones. Bradley. The thought was a cold stone in her gut. If only she had known her flight would lead so many to their graves. She fumbled with the flashlight Preston had given her. The click was deafening in the confined space. The beam revealed a rough-hewn tunnel, shored up with old timbers, sloping downward. The air smelled of damp earth and root rot. Behind her, the sounds of the hunt, snarls, barks, the crash of undergrowth, were muffled, then faded as she forced her legs to move, one stumbling step after another. The tunnel seemed to go on forever. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the flashlight beam jittering with her panic. A bolt hole, Preston had said, a place to survive. But survival felt like a betrayal. Marcus and Jax were dead. Liam was lost. And now Bradley, she hated him, feared him, but she hadn't wanted this. To be a catalyst for slaughter. What happened next changed everything. The tunnel ended not in a room, but at a heavy iron ladder bolted into the stone. Above, a circular hatch. She climbed, her muscles screaming, and pushed. It gave way with a groan of rusted hinges, swinging upward into silence. Cassandra hauled herself out into a small, circular space. It was a hunter's blind, cleverly built into the base of a massive, hollowed-out old-growth cedar. Moonlight filtered through chinks in the wooden walls. It was stocked. Wool blankets, sealed jugs of water, tins of food, a first aid kit. A single, narrow window slit looked out over a moonlit ravine, a silver thread of water at its bottom. She was deep in the forest, far from the lodge. She sank onto a blanket, hugging her knees. The adrenaline bled away, leaving a hollow, shaking exhaustion. The events of the day replayed in a sickening loop. Allison's furious accusation, the grim discovery on Liam, Preston's theory about the photograph, his hands on her face, his order to run. The night passed in fits of terrified alertness. Every snap of a twig outside was a ridge walker. Every rustle was Liam, tracking her. But only the normal sounds of the forest filled the hours until dawn tinged the sky gray through the slats. A sound at the hatch made her jerk upright, heart hammering. Not an animal's scratch. A deliberate three-tap knock. Before she could even think to hide, the hatch lifted. Nolan's grim, tired face appeared. He climbed in, filling the small space. He carried a pack and smelled of pine and cold air. "You're alive," he said, his voice flat. Is it over?" Cassandra asked, her voice a whisper. "For now, the perimeter is secure. The human intruder is dead." Nolan's eyes held no judgment, just a weary finality. "Liam brought the body to the edge of our territory. He's subdued. Back in the reinforced cells, sedated." Cassandra looked away, a wave of nausea hitting her. Bradley was a nightmare, but his end was horrifying. "The Alpha sent me to bring you back." Nolan set the pack down. "There's food, you should eat, the walk isn't short." "Back," a hysterical laugh bubbled in her throat. "Allison wants me dead. The pack thinks I'm a spy. Why would I go back to that?" Nolan met her gaze. "Because you underwent the rite. You are claimed. That binds you to his laws and to his protection. Your place is with the pack, especially now." He paused. "And because he ordered it. My duty is to follow my Alpha's orders. Even if you think he's wrong." "I don't think what I think matters," Nolan said, but his jaw was tight. "Eat. We leave in 10 minutes." The trek back was a silent, tense ordeal. Nolan led her on a circuitous route, his senses alert. The forest felt different in the daylight, still hostile but watchful. They approached the lodge from the rear, through the ceremonial clearing. The funeral pyres were cold mounds of ash. The ancient stone looked like a tombstone. The lodge itself bore scars. Deep gouges marred the log walls near the main door. A window was boarded up. The air was thick with the scent of grief and vigilance. Nolan didn't take her to the cell. He led her through the main common room. A dozen pairs of eyes tracked her. The hostility was a physical force. She saw a young woman weeping silently by the hearth, Jax's sister, maybe. A man with a bandaged arm glared with undisguised hatred. Allison stood near the fireplace, arms crossed. Her voice cut through the murmurs like a knife. "The little rabbit returns to the den. Brought more death with you, I see." Cassandra stopped, forcing herself to meet Allison's gaze. "I didn't ask for any of this." "You didn't have to. Your very presence is a plague." Allison took a step forward. "The human is dead. Liam is broken, maybe forever. 2 of our own are ashes, and you stand there under his protection." She spat the last word. "That's enough, Allison." Preston's voice came from the hallway leading to his quarters. He emerged, and the room fell utterly silent. He moved with a predator's grace, but Cassandra saw the fresh cuts on his arms, the shadow of exhaustion in his eyes. His presence, however, was absolute. He walked straight to Cassandra, his gaze sweeping over her as if checking for injury. "You're unharmed," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Thanks to you," she managed. His eyes held hers for a beat too long, a flicker of that primal recognition she still didn't understand. Then he turned to the room. "The Ridge Walker incursion has been repelled. The human trespasser has been dealt with. The threat is contained." "Contained," Allison scoffed. "The threat is standing right there, Alpha. She is the connection, the common thread. The law is clear." "I am aware of the law," Preston interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous low rumble. "The right of the claimed was performed. She is under my protection. Any challenge to that is a challenge to my authority. Is that what this is, Allison?" The silence was so profound Cassandra could hear the crackle of the fire. Allison's face paled, but her eyes burned. She lowered her head, a submission that screamed of resentment. "No, Alpha." Preston gave a single, slow nod. "Nolan, secure the eastern tree line. The rest of you to your posts. We are not yet at peace." His commands were quiet, but they sent the pack members moving with immediate purpose. He then looked at Cassandra. "With me." He didn't lead her to the side cell, but into his private quarters. The room was Spartan, a large bed, a heavy desk, shelves with books and maps. A door in the far wall, the one that connected to her former cell, was closed. He shut the main door behind them, and the lodge's tension muted. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair by the cold fireplace. He remained standing, a restless energy coming off him. "We need to talk, and you need to listen." Cassandra sat, her nerves frayed. "Are you going to tell me what I am to you? Why any of this is happening?" He paced once, then stopped, pinning her with his gaze. "My wolf recognized you. The first moment I caught your scent at Silver Creek. It's a pull, a certainty. I can't explain it to you in human terms. It's deeper than want. It's a knowing." "Knowing what?" she whispered. "That you are mine to protect, to keep." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "It overrides everything, pack politics, common sense, even my own better judgment. Allison is right about the danger you represent, but she is wrong about the solution. So I'm just a prisoner with a fancy title. The claimed. What does that even mean, practically? It means your life is tied to mine. It means you are under pack law, but also under my direct shield. It means no one can touch you without answering to me." He leaned on the desk, his bulk dominating the room. "But it also means you have responsibilities. You cannot be a passive bystander. The Ridge Walkers used you as a weapon. They will try again." A cold dread seeped into her. How? The photograph was just the beginning. They have a source of information. They knew about Bradley. They knew he would come for you. They knew how to manipulate Liam's specific madness. He fixed her with an intent stare. "You said you were just a student, running from a possessive man. But you stumbled into a war, Cassandra, and wars have spies." The implication landed like a blow. "You think someone in your pack is helping them." I think the last human who was here, the one Allison mentioned, was a traitor who fed information to the Ridge Walkers. My predecessor died because of it. Allison's brother died because of it. His voice was gravel. That wound has never healed. And now you arrive, and history seems to repeat. The pack sees a pattern. I need to see the truth. I'm not a spy, she said, the words feeling futile. Then prove it, he said, straightening. Help me find the real one. The door to his quarters burst open without a knock. Nolan stood there, his calm demeanor shattered. Alpha, you need to come, now it's Liam. Preston was moving before Nolan finished speaking. Cassandra followed, a sick curiosity pulling her in their wake. They moved through the lodge, down a set of stone stairs she hadn't seen before, into a cold, subterranean level. The reinforced cells. Liam's cell was at the end. The heavy door was open. The female guard who had been with him that first night was inside, kneeling. Liam lay on the cot, awake but listless, his eyes staring at the ceiling. His wrists were bound in thick leather straps secured to the bed frame. But it wasn't Liam that made Preston stop dead in the doorway. It was the wall. Scratched into the stone, over and over, with what must have been a bleeding fingernail, was a single word, a name, written in frantic, jagged letters that filled the space. Cassandra. Underneath it, like a signature, was a rough, crude symbol. Not a Ridge Walker insignia. Something else. A circle with a jagged line through it. The female guard looked up, her face ashen. He's been whispering it for an hour. Then he just started scratching. I didn't know what to do. Preston's expression was unreadable stone. He looked from the wall to Liam's vacant face, then slowly turned his head to look at Cassandra, who stood frozen in the corridor. The connection was undeniable, monstrous. Liam Madness was fixated on her, a beacon in his broken mind. Allison's voice came from behind them, soft and deadly. See what she leaves in her wake, Alpha. Even locked away, she corrupts. He carves her name like a prayer. What does his wolf know that yours refuses to see? Preston didn't answer her. He stepped into the cell, placing a hand on Liam's forehead. Liam flinched but didn't pull away, his eyes still empty. The symbol, Preston said, his voice tight. Do you recognize it? Nolan, from the doorway, inhaled sharply. It's old, very old. It's not a pack mark, it's a witch mark, a banishing sigil. The word hung in the damp air. Witch. Preston's hand stilled on Liam's brow. He turned his gaze back to Cassandra, and for the first time, she saw a crack in his absolute certainty. A flicker of a terrifying, new question. What if the pull wasn't about protection at all? What if it was a warning? The silence in the cellar was broken by a sudden, distant crash from upstairs, followed by a shout of alarm. Then a roar, not of a wolf, but of an engine, multiple engines, tearing through the quiet forest. Nolan spun, racing back up the stairs. Preston was right behind him, leaving Cassandra alone in the corridor with Allison and the haunting, scratched name on the wall. Allison smiled, a cold, terrible thing. Sounds like your other life has come calling, human. Or did you think your boyfriend came alone? The roar of engines swelled, mixed with the sound of shattering wood and panicked snarls from the pack above. Cassandra's blood ran cold. Bradley hadn't come alone. And as the first gunshot echoed through the lodge, she understood. The Ridge Walkers' plan had never been just about Liam. They had used Bradley to bring a far more dangerous human poison right to the Blackwood Pack's heart. And she had led them here. The thunder of automatic gunfire shattered the fragile calm. Cassandra flinched as bullets chewed into the lodge's timbered exterior, the sharp thwack-thwack-thwack of impacts followed by the roar of engines and men's shouts. Bradley's people. Here. Now. The world compressed into a single, deafening heartbeat of violence. Down! Preston's roar was not entirely human. He moved in a blur, one arm hooking around Cassandra's waist, yanking her from the doorway of Liam's cell and into the relative cover of the stone corridor. Nolan was already moving, a snarl ripping from his throat as he sprinted toward the lodge's main room. "The front is breached!" A voice bellowed from the common room, Allison's, sharp with fury and command. "To the Alpha, protect the lodge." Preston's eyes, molten gold in the dim light, locked onto Cassandra's. In them, she saw the war, the Alpha needing to lead the defense, and the primal force that had claimed her screaming to hide her away. "The bolt hole," he gritted out, already pushing her toward the rear passage. "Go, now you know the way." "But the traitor," she started, her voice thin with terror. "Is here fighting beside us or waiting to strike," he finished, his hand cupping her jaw, a touch both desperate and absolute. "I will find them, but you must be alive for that to matter. Go!" Another volley of gunfire closer. Glass shattered. A werewolf's pained howl echoed, then was cut short. The sound decided her. She nodded, a jerky, terrified motion, and turned to run. What happened next changed everything. As she fled down the narrow servants' passage toward the hidden tunnel door, a figure peeled away from the shadows. Allison. Her face was a mask of cold rage, streaked with soot. She didn't speak. She simply raised a hand, and in it, glinting dully, was a compact 9 pistol. Not a werewolf's weapon. A human's, pointed directly at Cassandra's heart. "You don't run," Allison said, her voice eerily calm over the cacophony. "You face what you've brought to our door." "Allison, no," Preston said. "Preston is blinded," she spat. "By you, by whatever curse you carry. That mark on Liam's wall, it's a banishing sigil, for demons, for witches, for things that corrupt from within. My brother died because of a human's betrayal. I will not watch my entire pack die for another." Cassandra's blood turned to ice. The gun was steady. The hatred in Allison's eyes was absolute. This was it. Not a monster from the woods, but a grieving sister with a finger on the trigger. A thunderous crash shook the lodge from the front. The distinct, guttural roar of a transformed werewolf, not of the Blackwoods, answered the gunfire. The Ridge Walkers were here, too. The attack was coordinated. Human distraction, werewolf kill strike. Allison's gaze flickered, just for an instant, toward the sound. It was the only opening Cassandra would get. She didn't think. She moved. Years of dodging Bradley's sudden, violent grabs had honed a kind of desperate agility. She dropped, not away, but forward, under the line of the gun, slamming her shoulder into Allison's midsection. The gun went off, the report deafening in the confined space, the bullet sparking off the stone wall beside them. They went down in a tangle. The pistol skittered away. Allison was stronger, fueled by fury and wolf gift, but Cassandra was pure, terrified adrenaline. She scrambled, clawing, not to fight, but to get free. Her hand closed on the cold metal of the gun. She didn't point it. She threw it, as hard as she could, down the dark passage. It clattered into the blackness. "You see," Allison hissed, pinning her. "You fight like a cornered rat, not like one of us, not like his." "I'm not trying to be," Cassandra cried, the truth of it tearing from her. "I just don't want to die." From the main lodge, Preston's roar shook the very foundations. "Allison, where is she?" The sound of his voice, of his fear for her, seemed to fracture something in the other woman. Her grip loosened, just for a second, her head turning toward his call. It was enough. Cassandra shoved her off, stumbled to her feet, and ran, not for the tunnel, but toward the sound of the fight. If only she had known what she was running into. The common room was a scene from a nightmare. The large front window was blown inwards. 2 black SUVs were parked haphazardly in the clearing, doors open, their headlights painting the chaos in stark, moving shadows. Men in tactical vests, Bradley's friends, his enforcers, fired from behind the vehicles. But they were not the main threat. The true horror was in the center of the room. 3 massive, furred ridge walker wolves were locked in combat with the Blackwood defenders. Nalan, in his powerful hybrid form, wrestled with one, his fangs sunk into its shoulder. But the other 2 were cutting a swath toward Preston, who fought in human form, his movements preternaturally fast, dodging claws and gunfire alike. He held a long, wicked-looking hunting knife, and it was black with blood. And there, near the shattered window, was Liam. He was free, he was transformed, but this was not the mindless beast from the cellar. This was something more focused, more terrible. His fur was matted with fresh blood and old gore, ridge walker blood, Cassandra realized. He stood over the body of a human gunman, his muzzle dipped. But his burning amber eyes were not on the prey at his feet. They were scanning the room, searching, ignoring the battle around him. Searching for her, he found her the moment she entered. A low, possessive rumble vibrated the air, cutting through the noise of battle. "Mine!" Preston heard it. He turned, and seeing Cassandra in the doorway, his control snapped. A roar of pure alpha fury erupted from him, a sound of such commanding power that every combatant, human and wolf, flinched. The ridge walker facing him seized the opening, lunging. Cassandra screamed a warning that was lost in the din. Preston moved. It wasn't a dodge. It was a brutal, efficient termination. He met the lunging wolf's throat with his knife, twisted, and flung the dying beast aside. In the same motion, he threw the knife. It flew, end over end, and buried itself to the hilt in the chest of the human gunman taking aim at Nalan. He was now weaponless, standing between 2 remaining threats, the last ridge walker wolf and Liam, who had begun to stalk toward Cassandra, his focus absolute. "Alpha!" Nalan yelled, finishing his opponent and leaping to intercept the final ridge walker, giving Preston a moment. That moment was for her. Preston didn't go for another weapon. He simply placed himself directly in Liam's path, his body a shield between the moon-mad wolf and Cassandra. He stood in human form, his hands empty, his chest heaving. "Liam," Preston's voice was a crack of force, the alpha command saturating the word. "Stand down, look at me, that is an order." Liam slowed. His head tilted, the human soldier buried deep within wrestling with the beast's imperative. His eyes flickered from Cassandra to his alpha. A wine-strangled growl escaped him. He took a shuddering step forward. Preston didn't move an inch. "She is mine," he stated, the words not a shout but a decree that seemed to still the very air. "By the right, by my word, by my wolf. You will not touch what is mine." The claim hung in the gunpowder-scented air, primal and absolute. Liam hesitated, confused, the 2 most powerful instincts in his universe, obedience to his alpha and the moon-driven fixation on the female, tearing him apart. The last ridge walker, seeing Preston distracted, threw off Nalan and charged, not at the alpha, but past him, its target clear. The vulnerable human distraction that had caused all this. Cassandra saw the wall of fur and fangs coming. She froze. Preston moved faster than sight. He didn't transform. He intercepted. He took the full, brutal charge on his body, the wolf's jaws closing on his shoulder with a sickening crunch of bone. Cassandra's scream was ripped from her soul. But Preston did not cry out. He wrapped his arms around the beast's neck, his muscles corded with impossible strength, and squeezed. A gurgling, choking snarl was cut short. With a final, vicious wrench, he broke the ridge walker's neck. He dropped the limp form, blood streaming from his mangled shoulder, his face pale but his eyes blazing. He turned slowly back to Liam. The display of raw, protective power, even wounded, was the final word. Liam's predatory stalk collapsed. He dropped to his belly, whining, his muzzle pressed to the bloody floor in a posture of profound submission. The fight left him. Silence, sudden and shocking, fell. The remaining human gunmen, seeing their werewolf allies dead and a furious, blood-drenched alpha staring them down, lost their nerve. They scrambled for their vehicles. Engines revved, and the SUVs peeled away into the night, leaving only the moans of the wounded and the crackle of settling debris. The cost was laid bare. 2 more Blackwood shapes lay still among the wreckage. The air reeked of blood, gunpowder, and wet fur. Preston swayed on his feet, his hand going to his ruined shoulder. His gaze found Cassandra, ensuring she was whole before it swept the room, assessing his pack. It landed on Allison, who stood in the corridor entrance, her face ashen. "Secure Liam," Preston ordered, his voice ragged but firm. "Sedate him, take him below." Nolan and another warrior moved to obey, cautiously approaching the subdued Liam. Then Preston looked at Allison. "You had a gun. You pointed it at my claimed." Allison lifted her chin, but her defiance was hollow, drained by the blood on the floor. "I believed I was protecting the pack from the source of the poison." "The poison," Preston said, taking a painful step forward, "was a traitor's whisper and an old grief you let fester. The Ridge Walkers used a stolen photograph to madden Liam. They used Bradley's obsession to stage this attack. They used our history, our fears." He stopped before her. "Who knew about the photograph Cassandra took at Silver Creek? Who could have accessed it after we took her camera?" The question hung in the air. Cassandra remembered her camera, confiscated that first night. It had been in Preston's possession, then who else? Allison's eyes widened, the realization dawning not on her, but on a young male guard named Eli, who was tending to a wounded packmate near the wall. He froze, his hands stilling. Preston's head turned. He didn't need to ask. The guilt was a scent in the air. "Eli." "Alpha, I didn't," the young man stammered, rising. "The camera was in my study," Preston said, advancing slowly, each step a testament to his pain and his power. "You cleaned in there, 2 days after the capture. You're the only one who goes in there besides me." He stopped, the truth settling like a death shroud. "You sold a photograph to the Ridge Walkers. You gave them the pretext to attack. You got Marcus and Jax killed." Eli broke. "They promised me a place," he sobbed. "They said you were leading us to ruin, clinging to human weakness. They said the human was proof. I just showed them the picture." Allison stared at the weeping traitor, the tool of the enemy she had so desperately feared. The human she had blamed was innocent of this. The betrayal had come from within, from a face she saw every day. The fight drained from her utterly. She sank to her knees, not in submission to Preston, but under the weight of her own catastrophic error. Preston looked at the broken boy. "Take him to the cells. We will deal with him after the moon." His voice was cold, final. The pack moved, pulling Eli away. Then, and only then, did Preston allow himself to stumble. Cassandra was there in an instant, her arms sliding around his uninjured side, taking his weight. He leaned into her, his breath hot and ragged against her temple. "The bolt hole," he murmured, ironic. "You're a terrible patient," she whispered, her tears finally falling, mixing with the blood and grime on his skin. He gave a pained, husky laugh that was more a cough. "But I am your alpha. And you are my heart's unexpected beat, Cassandra Vale." He allowed Nolan and her to help him to his quarters. The pack worked in silent, efficient shock, clearing the dead, tending the wounded. The battle was over. The traitor was found. The immediate threat was gone. But as they settled Preston onto the bed in his room, and Cassandra began to clean his wound with trembling hands, the deeper questions remained, whispering like the wind through the broken window. What was the pull between them if not a curse? What had Liam seen or sensed to carve that sigil? And what did it mean to be truly, irrevocably claimed? Days passed in a tense, painful rhythm. Preston healed with werewolf swiftness, but the scars, physical and otherwise, remained. Liam, heavily sedated, was slowly coming back to himself in the cells, haunted and ashamed. Eli awaited his fate. Allison avoided Cassandra's eyes, her hatred replaced by a complex. A week after the attack, under a cold, clear sky, Preston took Cassandra to the ceremonial clearing. The funeral pyres were cold ash now. The ancient stones stood silent. "You have a choice," he said, his voice quiet. His shoulder was still bandaged, but he stood tall. "The claim I made was for protection. The right you accepted was a vow from you to abide by our laws, but it was not complete." He turned to face her, his golden eyes serious. "The bond my wolf recognizes, it wants more. It wants a mate, a true partner, not a captive, not a political claim. You." He took her hands. They were warm. "But that is a choice only you can make. You can leave. I will have Nalan take you to the edge of the territory, provide you with funds, and you can disappear. Your life, your art, your freedom. No one will follow you. Or..." He swallowed. The mighty Alpha laid bare. "Or you can stay, with me, as my mate, and face whatever this is, the suspicion, the danger, the mystery of what you are to my kind. Help me lead this pack into a future where we are not defined by fear of the outside world." Cassandra looked at him. She saw the merciless Alpha who had captured her. She saw the ruthless protector who had broken a wolf's neck with his bare hands for her. She saw the lonely leader who saw a traitor in every shadow. And she saw the man whose touch sparked a fire in her blood that Bradley's possession had never kindled. A fire that felt like coming home. She thought of her photography, of the light through the pines. She could capture that light anywhere. But this fierce, terrible, beautiful connection, it was here, with him. The silence stretched, filled only by the sigh of the wind in the ancient trees. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. She didn't kiss him. Instead, she placed her palm flat over his heart, feeling its strong, steady beat against her skin. "I was running from a man who wanted to own me," she said, her voice clear. "I'm not running from one who wants to stand beside me." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "The pull goes both ways, Preston. I don't understand it. The sigil, Liam's madness, it terrifies me. But you don't, not anymore." A low, relieved rumble started in his chest, vibrating under her hand. The gold in his eyes softened, warming. "So you choose to stay." "I choose to stay," she affirmed. "I choose to be your mate." The words were a key turning in a lock deep within the world. Preston's arms came around her, careful of his injury, but firm, pulling her into an embrace that felt like sanctuary and promise. He rested his forehead against hers. "Then we will face the mysteries together," he vowed, his lips brushing hers. As Alpha and as Luna. In the deep woods, from the direction of the Ridge Walker territory, a lone, challenging howl lifted into the twilight. The war was not over. The threat remained. But in the clearing, wrapped in the arms of her merciless, devoted Alpha, Cassandra Vale was no longer a captive. She was home, and she was ready to fight for it. The end,